Are you looking for a new hobby and are not sure whether to learn how to knit or to crochet? You might be asking yourself, which one is easier, which one is faster, and which will make you want to finish your first project? You might think the answer is simple, but it is not. Today I'm breaking down the real differences between these two timeless crafts and help you decide which one is right for you. If we haven't met before, hi, my name is Annika and I'm coming to you from Germany. I am a natural yarn dyer as well as an avid knitter, and I like to create something every day. But before you think that I am completely biased because I am a knitter, please let me tell you, I also know how to crochet and I actually enjoy both crafts. Although I am a much more experienced knitter than I am a crocheter, I think that I can really appreciate both of these crafts for what they are, and I am going to share all about that with you today. So this video is all about helping you decide which craft is best for you. Let's get started. We will start off by talking about the differences between knitting and crochet, the tools you need, which one is easier to learn, as well as the pros and cons of each craft. I will also share a bit more about my personal fiber story, as well as give you some helpful resources that will help you get started, including ones specifically for left-handed makers. This video is sponsored by Craftsy, more on them in a bit. Let's get started right away with what's the difference. Let's start with the basics. Knitting uses 2 needles and creates a fabric with a smooth, stretchy texture. Crochet uses 1 hook and the fabric tends to be thicker and more textured. The difference in tools leads to different techniques, styles and results. Here's what you'll need to get started. Knitting needles, yarn, a tapestry needle and scissors. There are different types of knitting needles, straight needles, circular needles and double-pointed needles, also called DPN. Straight needles are great if you are knitting a project flat, like a scarf, for example. Circular needles are basically straight needles that are attached by a cord. They are great if you want to knit something in the round, for example a hat or a sweater. And double-pointed needles, also called DPNs, have these 2 tips at both ends. They usually come in a set of 4 or 5 and are used for knitting socks or smaller circumferences in the round, for example the sleeve of a sweater. For a beginner knitter, circular needles are the best option. I do not recommend starting out with DPNs because you just have to handle a lot more needles at a time. Knitting needles also come in different materials. You can find wooden, metal and bamboo needles. And here is a quick tip. Wooden needles are perfect for beginners because they are less slippery and give you more control compared to a metal needle, for example. With regards to the yarn, I recommend that you use a thicker yarn to get started. For example, worsted weight would be a great yarn weight to begin with. A tapestry needle looks like a regular sewing needle, but it has a blunt tip and a large eye. It is used to weave in the ends of your knitting once you're done with the project. And the scissors are used to cut your yarn. An optional tool, but one that I do recommend, are, whoops, stitch markers. Let me see, can you see those? Those are great for marking the beginning of a round if you're knitting in the round, and they are useful for all kinds of situations. This is my favorite type of stitch marker, so a very simple one. If you don't have any stitch markers, you can easily use a safety pin instead, for example, but I do recommend that you have something to mark the beginning of the round at least. For crochet, you will need a crochet hook. You'll also need some yarn, a tapestry needle, and some scissors as well. When it comes to crochet hooks, they usually come either in metal, wooden or plastic form. For beginners, I recommend using a metal hook like the one I have here, because then the hook can slide easily in and out of the loop. I'm going to link some of my favorite tools for beginners in the description box below for you. Let's move on with the question, which one is easier to learn? This is a question I get asked all the time, and the answer is it really depends on you. Crochet tends to be easier to pick up at first. There's only one active loop on the hook, so there is less chance to drop stitches, and you are also only working with one hook at a time. Knitting can be trickier to learn initially because you're working with 2 needles at least and managing multiple stitches at a time, the so-called live stitches. But once you get the hang of knitting, it can feel very meditative and rhythmic. So it's not really about which is easier, it's about which clicks with you. Now, there is something important to be aware of when deciding which craft to learn, and that is the knitting style and the crochet terminology. There are 2 main knitting styles, English and continental. In English knitting, you hold the yarn in your right hand and throw it around the needle. In continental, the yarn is in your left hand and you pick it through the stitches. Personally, I learned how to knit continental first, and to me it felt very intuitive. Many people also say that continental knitting is faster compared to English style knitting because you do not have to make this extra motion of throwing the yarn around the needle. And if you already know how to crochet, knitting continental might feel more natural to you because you are already used to hold the yarn in your left hand. It might be something you simply have to try out and see what feels more natural to you. I recommend starting with one of those 2 styles at first, but if you are getting more experienced, it makes sense to learn the other style as well. For example, there are certain projects, specifically colorwork projects, where you are going to work with 2 strands of yarn at a time, and if you know how to knit both continental and English style, you can hold the one strand of yarn in your left hand and knit it continental, and hold the other strand of yarn in your right hand and knit it English. This way you are going to progress very fast in your colorwork project, and it's just so much fun working with 2 different strands of yarn at a time. Now, before you say that this is way too complicated and you don't know which style of knitting to choose, let me tell you, crochet also has a quirk because it comes in either UK or US terminology, and depending on which of those 2 terminologies is used, the same term has different meanings. For example, a US single crochet is the same as a UK double crochet, and a US double crochet is the same stitch as a UK treble crochet. Confusing, right? So whenever you follow a pattern, please make sure before you get started to check if it is written in either UK or US terminology. Most designers put that statement directly at the top of the pattern. Now, if all of this sounds overwhelming to you, please let me reassure you, it is not. You simply have to get started and be okay with the fact that you are not going to be perfect from the get-go. This is a learning process, and it is totally fine and normal to make mistakes. And in addition, there are tons of different tutorials out there teaching you everything you need to know about both knitting and crochet. And one very easy way to get started is with the help of Craftsy, who are kindly sponsoring today's video. Craftsy is an online community of creative, like-minded makers where members can find endless inspiration, advance their skills, and discover their new favorite hobby. Craftsy classes include step-by-step instructions, plus helpful downloadable resources to make learning easy. So whether you want to learn how to knit or crochet, there are a number of different classes available on Craftsy that will help you get started. If you go on the Craftsy website and click on the knit icon and then have a look at the different classes, you will see that there are several suitable classes for beginners, like top-down sock knitting for beginners, top-down shawls, and even this startup library class by Susan B. Anderson. And the same is true for crochet. If you click on Explore Classes and click on Crocheting here, you will find classes that will teach you how to crochet your first sweater, about the different stitches, or simple crocheting accessories. Whatever project you would like to make first, there is very likely a class on Craftsy that will show you exactly how to do it. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This offer is valid for new members only. Thank you so much, Craftsy, for sponsoring this video, and let's move on and have a look at the different pros and cons now, because each of those two crafts really shines in their own way. The pros and cons. First up, knitting. One of the biggest advantages of knitting is the drape. It creates this smooth, flexible fabric that's perfect for things like sweaters, cardigans, and socks. If you've ever admired those delicate flowing knits in high-end shops, chances are they were made using knitting. Knitting also tends to use less yarn than crochet, so if you are working with something luxurious or hand-dyed, knitting might be the better option for you. And finally, there's just something incredibly soothing about the rhythm of knitting. Once you get into the flow, it feels a bit like a moving meditation. But it's not all perfect. One of the biggest frustrations for beginner knitters is the fact that knitting is a bit harder to fix if you make a mistake. Dropping a stitch might mean that you have to tink, that's knit spelled backwards, to undo your work one stitch at a time. Knitting can also be a slower craft overall. Some people, including myself, love that about knitting. That's just part of the charm. But if you're looking for quick results, knitting might not be your favorite. Now let's talk about crochet, the speed demon of the yarn world. Crochet is often faster than knitting. It's just one hook and one active loop, so there's less to manage and you can really zip through the projects once you've got the basics down. Crochet is also incredibly versatile. You can make blankets, cute amigurumi toys, even bags or home decor items, often also only using the same basic stitches. And here's a big one, mistakes are easier to fix. If you mess something up, you just pull the yarn and redo it, no fuss. But crochet has its disadvantages too. For one, it uses more yarn compared to knitting. This might not be very important to you if you are just making a, let's say, dishcloth, but if you are working on a larger project like a sweater, for example, this really adds up. And in addition, while there are a number of very talented crochet designers out there that are designing beautiful garments, there are still a lot fewer crochet garment patterns available compared to knitting, at least for now. So, knitting or crochet? Elegant and drapey or quick and textured? Keep watching because I am going to share a couple of tips with you now that will help you decide which one is best for you, depending on how you like to learn. A quick note for my left-handed friends, you are not forgotten. I know that it can be that much harder to learn something new if you are following someone's tutorial who is working mirrored to you. And that's why I have gathered a couple of resources specifically for left-handed knitters or crocheters that I'm going to link in the description box below for you. My experience, a personal story. So I actually learned how to knit first as a kid in primary school. I think it was in 3rd grade. And we all had to knit some kind of animal, and for whatever reason I chose to knit an earthworm, probably because it was or seemed easiest to do for me. And unfortunately I don't have it anymore, so I cannot show you, but I remember very well this feeling that I was so proud of my creation when I finished it. I then didn't pick up my knitting needles again for some time, but when I was a teenager, I became very interested in fashion, and I taught myself how to sew on an old sewing machine that had belonged to my grandmother. And I remember experimenting sewing a couple of pieces for myself back then. Later on in my 20s, I did pick up my knitting needles again and I made a couple of hats and scarves for myself, but I didn't really practice it regularly. But when I became a mom in 2014 and my whole life changed from one day to the next, I suddenly felt a very strong urge inside me to start creating again. Up to this point, I had been working as a chemist and I didn't even realize it back then, but this whole creative side of me had not been nurtured at all during all those years at the university and then later on during my job in the corporate world. And it was so joyful and somehow like coming home to a part of myself that I hadn't even known that I was missing during all those years when I started crafting again. So at first I started sewing again and I made a couple of pieces for my daughter and other babies from our friends and family and whatnot, and then I started knitting again, and it gave me so much joy and fulfillment, and I have not stopped ever since. And I did not only sew and knit, I also taught myself how to crochet, and I made a blanket for my daughters. Let me show you. I made this blanket here, and I was still very much a beginner crocheter at that time, but I was determined to learn it, and I just took it one granny square at a time, one stitch at a time, and I was able to create this beautiful blanket. And crochet was not the only fiber craft that I taught myself how to do during that time. I also learned how to embroider and even spin, and this love for fiber crafts has not left me ever since. And I, in addition, also started to learn how to do dyeing yarn with natural dyes, and this is, let me tell you, a whole other fulfilling fiber craft that you can also learn if this is something that interests you. So today I really could not imagine my life without fiber crafts in it. And if you're still on the fence whether you should learn how to knit or crochet, I highly recommend that you give at least one of them a try. It is such a wonderful enrichment in one's life. So, which one should you learn first? So if you want fast results and a bit more forgiveness when you make mistakes, start with crochet. If you are drawn to elegant clothing and love the idea of a relaxing rhythm, start with knitting. Start simple, but simply start. And just be aware that you do not have to choose forever. You can get started with one of these crafts for now and maybe try out the other one later on. And just to remind you again, if you're looking for tutorials suitable for beginners, please check out the description box below. And if you are looking for an even more structured step-by-step approach, don't forget to check out Craftsy. Now, I would love to hear from you. Please leave me a comment letting me know which of those two crafts you have decided to try out first, or if you already know how to knit or crochet or both, please leave a comment as well letting me know your favorite thing about the craft. Whichever path you choose, you're joining a beautiful, welcoming and creative community. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, happy making. Bye guys!